Hey everybody, this is Ryan, and I've got my special guest, Christy Marsden, today. I am really excited about this call because, Christy is just going to completely open up about owning a studio. And just to give you everyone, that's, either on the call or going to watch the recording, Yoga Blend, the name of Christy's studio, has been voted the number two yoga studio in LA by the Huffington Post, which is amazing. One of the top 5 yoga studios to visit in LA by the United Way magazine. So that's an amazing exposure on every United flight. Basically, they're looking at this, gosh, maybe I had too much coffee today. Seeing this expose on the Yoga Blend. And then also one of the top 18 studios to visit by expertise.com. And we were just talking that there was 863 different studios in LA that they looked at. So to be in the top 18 that's unbelievable. Christy, thank you so much for joining the call. I really appreciate this.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you, Ryan.
Well, let's dive into this because, this is just one of the reasons that I wanted to do this is because, honestly, about 70% of people, maybe 60% of the people that join the Yoga Mastermind coaching program are studio owners. And I think probably one of the reasons why that is because studio owners often they've become more realistic about, the business of yoga. And, having yoga be a part of just about growing a business and, that you've got to take care of the bills. You've got to take care of the teachers. You've got to take care of the, keep the lights on. There's things that you have to do. And so becoming smarter about the business of yoga is just a natural progression. And so that's why I think I see so many teachers that have become, studio owners. And so what I want to do is just kind of blow the lid off of everything regarding a studio in terms of what can you do to be successful, what you shouldn't do. Also, what is it, the different scenarios as, renting out a space, to teach classes versus, opening up a studio in your home versus, again, doing a retail space for a studio. So let's just kind of start out maybe a little bit on the easier side. And, Christy, kind of give me some ideas, what was it that led you to becoming a teacher? What was the draw to become a yoga teacher for you?
So when I grew up in the South in a very conservative sort of area, and I didn't have a lot of skills for navigating, what were the thoughts in my head and how to bring things to, all of that. So when somebody mentioned that I should try yoga because I had back pain, I tried it and instantly I felt like somebody was speaking my language, I felt like, oh, wow, oh my gosh, and I had no idea. And it was tiny. There was 3 little studios in all of Nashville, and one of them or 2 of them were 3 blocks from each other, and they were all 30 minutes away from my house. And so I fell in love with it, and I just dove right in. I was doing a bunch of different styles, which is where the name Yoga Blend comes from. I was doing Iyengar and Ashtanga and power, and I was just loved it all. I thought it was all great, a lot of restorative, and but it was for the first time I felt like I had a way to organize my thoughts and sort of and learn about who I was in a way that was not, oh, well, this is the way that the world works. It was sort of uncovering some things that were stirring inside of me, but I had no idea how to put any sort of language or pathway around it.
Right.
And it opened that, it gave me an opportunity to start to see what was possible and how to, gain some strength, because I tended to be over flexible, a little bit of a people pleaser. I'm recovering still, to this day. But, it gave me a chance to find boundaries and to find strength and stay centered and not lose myself in other people's ideas of who I should be. And that just blew me away. And it started, I will say things got worse before they got better when I started doing yoga.
Well, it usually does. It usually does. It's the yoke. It's definitely the yoking.
Totally. And so once I started doing it, I knew that it was changing my life, and I wanted to share with other people. I knew that this was something that I felt for the first time in my life, that I had something that I really wanted to share with the world. And I wanted to tell them how impactful it was and show them the things that, changed my life for the better. So I knew pretty quickly I wanted to teach, but I had to work out some stuff. And I knew pretty quickly I wanted to open a studio. And the main reason is because I worked in corporate America. And
what were you doing? What were you doing in corporate America?
I worked for an entertainment company, and then I did something which, when I say this, it seems like a completely different, like I don't even know who that person was, but I did it. I worked in an entertainment company and did all kinds of things like post-production and, teleport and, things like that. But this one company I worked for was an industrial auctioneering company. What? How did I end up there? I have no idea. But anyway, I did
so like PVC piping and like all this like large industrial
presses and bolt machines,
wow.
like million square foot facilities with these. I mean, it was crazy. I was like, who am I? Because I was teaching yoga part-time. And I'm like, this is so out of alignment. And I mean, just awful people. They were just greedy and like, just, oh my gosh, so unhealthy in every way. But I did it. And I always was fighting for employees. Like I was always the person, like I wasn't the CEO or the CFO, but I was the person right, I was like right under that director or upper management. And I was always fighting to protect the employees, and I was always fighting to make sure that they were appreciated and fighting to keep their jobs and fighting to justify them and keep them happy and keep them productive. So I always felt that I was much more of an advocate for the employees than I was for the bottom line and that piece. And because I have a pretty spunky spirit, I was able to stand up to people and, and fight for people and save their jobs. And so I was like, it'd be really nice if I could, and I never felt freedom to really do the things I wanted to do. And I always had to get someone's approval, and somebody, because of some fear-based business was just not something I was into. And I ran a bunch of people's businesses, and I learned a lot about what not to do more than anything. I learned how, employees thrive and how they don't, and how upper management has a direct impact on that. And so I wanted to do it myself, and I wanted to do right by people. And so that's when the idea started churning of opening a studio, but fear kept me from doing it for 8 years.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
No, that's...
I knew I wanted to open it in 97. I didn't open my doors till 2005. I was terrified of all the security and whatever that story that's just not true about jobs, because, they don't really, ultimately, most of them, it's a numbers game, and
sure.
yeah. So it took me a while to...
Let me just mention just real quick is that I experience it every single day. Not only like teachers that are going through the program, but also just people when I run my webinars and I talk to teachers like doing my vision calls. The fear is just overwhelming. People are afraid to put themselves out there. They're afraid, even when I can show them the no-brainer investment in this program, they still have so much trouble like actually moving forward. And I think it's like a lot of people are willing to talk a good game about the life that they want, but most people are not willing to go after it. And that's why in the beginning of the program I say, listen, it's going to be freaking hard. It's going to be hard, because if this was easy, then you'd have so much more competition.
Totally.
Like think about it. Like if yoga, like creating creating a signature program or just getting clients just to pay you, truly what you're worth. I mean, if that was all easy to create a business that you love and work with people that you love to work with, if that was easy, then you'd have so much more competition. And that's why it's worth it to go through these hoops and go through these obstacles and test yourself and be like, you know what? I have enough faith in me that I'm going to open up a studio and I'm going to make it work, and that's what you did. I mean, so thank you for sharing that it took you 8 years to finally develop the courage to actually go off on your own. So how did you start out? Like, were you weighing, like, do a studio at home? Like what, how did that come out?
Yeah, I had been teaching part-time for 8 years. So I taught part-time for 8 years. And, and I just basically what I did and I want to share this for anybody who's like, in maybe a job that they're, I just decided that that time was going to be my training ground, that I was going to develop my practice, develop more of a sense of who I was. Because quite honestly, had I opened it sooner, it would not have gone as well, because I needed some personal work, number one. But number two, I just took it as an opportunity to go, okay, I'm going to learn as much as I can about business as I possibly can, ask the right questions, learn, get in there, get involved. And I became a senior project manager, which means I knew every single aspect of a business. So because I had to deal with everybody from marketing to finance to the technical to, everything in between, operation, so I just used it as training ground and did a really good job to get good at knowing what to do. And then, like I said, I learned a lot about what not to do. So I taught, I rented space. My teacher was a blessing. She was so wonderful. She saw things in me that I couldn't see, and I think that's the sign of a good teacher, is that they pull out, they give you that sort of reflection that allows you to really see something that you hadn't seen before. So she was great. She was like, you rent space at my studio. You don't have to pay me, and sub classes and do this. And, oh, I'm going out of town. Why don't you run the studio while I'm gone? She was like an angel.
Wow.
This amazing woman.
So you were renting space out of her studio, teaching your classes before you eventually opened up Yoga Blend. Was that?
No, this was the very beginning in Nashville still.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were, just to be clear, like that, you were saying it took you 8 years before you started Yoga Blend. Was that during that 8 years that you were doing that? You were renting space out of her studio?
Well, I did that for a couple of years, but then I ended up going to the West Coast. So I was always renting space. So I reached out to my junior high principal. He was still the principal at the school, and I rented space in an auditorium, or not rented. He just gave me the keys. He's like, "It's fine. I love you." Like, fine. So many years later. And then my yoga teacher.
They would not do that at my high school. They'd be like, "Ryan, we're gonna have the security guards stick around for your yoga class."
So I did that. I rented, and everybody was so good to me. It was like everybody, really wanted to support me. But I did it out of there. I did it out of the yoga studio. I went to people's houses. I had a kit in my car of yoga blocks and blankets and mats, and I would go to people's houses and do semi-privates, and I just traveled all over and did that thing. I taught at gyms, and I went out to California for various circumstances. The corporate job led me there, and taught there in San Francisco, down in San Diego. And it was just always teaching. Ended up in LA and continued to teach, and really, really wanted to open a studio. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to quit my corporate job. It makes me miserable, and I'm going to teach full time. So I was like, okay, I need this many privates to make it work. And then I quit, and a month later I panicked and took another corporate job. This was like, this is getting close. This is getting down to the countdown of opening Yoga Blend. So
and you were in LA now. You were now in LA.
I was in LA now. This is when I was working for an industrial auctioneer company, the second one I worked for, which is so crazy that I ended up back in that. And I got really sick. I had some stuff I had to deal with, and I was miserable, and I would wake up with panic attacks and anxiety attacks. So I quit, and then panicked, took another corporate job. They were paying me so much money to do not even this much of what I was capable of. And I was like, okay, it's great to get paid all this money, but I am bored to tears. Like, I literally cannot continue to accept all this money. So he was my fiance at the time. He's like, just quit your job. Mm-hmm. I've got the bills. Here's a little chunk of change, but you're going to have to do it for that, because that's it. And I was like, okay, I can do this. So I did it all. I opened in 2005. Oh, and I started teaching at my house on Monday nights while I was getting ready to open. And still to this day, when I go in town, I teach Monday nights. And some people that were in my living room still come to that class, which is really awesome, from 13 years ago.
Well, so let's do this. Let's do this, because we jumped around a little bit. So let's just kind of like, you started out, when did you go through your teacher training? Like, what year was that?
Okay, so I did teacher training back before they had any kind of like
Yoga Alliance.
What's that? Yeah, before that. But Yoga Alliance was 99, and I did my first teacher training in 1997 in Nashville with Rodney Yee. He came to Nashville. It was awesome.
Wow.
And my teacher encouraged me. I was like, no way. She's like, you're doing it. You're doing it. You're doing it. And then you're going to start teaching after, and you're going to start subbing. I'm like, what? No. So he came and did this teacher training intensive. It wasn't like a 200-hour program back then. It was just this
right.
whatever intensive. And then I apprenticed with her, because that's the way it used to be, old school style. So I apprenticed with her for like 4 years.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So that was 1995. So you started
when I did Rodney Yee's. Yeah.
90 what? Say again? 90 what?
97.
97. The year I graduated high school.
Yeah.
And so then you did an apprenticeship with your teacher for 4 years. So you were teaching during that time as well, and you were learning with her. So then what year did you, and then continue on that road, you started to actually, like, your teacher allowed you to rent space in the studio to teach your own classes, and even
97.
Right. And then to even at that point in time, they also allowed you to start actually, hold on one second. They allowed you to, again, rent space out of the studio. And even when she would go out of town, you would kind of run the studio as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got a sense of what it was like to rent out a space and actually have a studio in some ways. And then you moved to LA, correct?
Yep.
Okay. What did you do to, like, start up in LA? You said your principal actually, you were using the auditorium at your old high school.
Yeah, that was still in Nashville. Yeah. That was still
in Nashville. Okay.
From 95 to 2000 is when I spent all my time in Nashville. And then I moved to California. So from 2000 until I opened the studio in 2005, I was in various parts of California, but ended up in Los Angeles. And again, I rented space from a cardio bar that once they closed, they gave me keys, and I'd pay, an hourly fee, and I could just register as many people. I taught out of my house. I had a pretty big living room, hardwood floors. I could have like 20 people in there. So I would teach out of my house, donation classes. I would teach at the park. I would teach privates. I would go in and teach for businesses and corporate, whatever they want, health fairs and things like that. I just was teaching because I loved it, and then had a full-time job that I was doing,
Wow.
So I was teaching 4 days a week and then a full-time 60-hour-a-week job. So yeah, that was just what I did for 4 years before I opened the studio.
Okay, so then let's kind of like let's pause there for a second. So you've done the whole renting space, to teach your classes. You've also taught out of your home.
Yep.
And then now your progression finally was to open up a retail location.
Yes.
So that made sense to you. Like, out of all those scenarios, the first two scenarios of renting space and then also like holding classes at your house, you felt like the next progression to get you to where you wanted to go was to open up a retail space. Is that kind of on point?
Yeah, it was always the plan to open a retail, like a yoga studio. That was always my plan, but I knew that I wasn't ready, in many ways, financially or whatever. I wasn't willing to give up the corporate job security, whatever. So I knew that was the end game. Right. But I was willing to just do those other things until it was time to do that, for sure. Yeah.
Can you give people an idea of the startup costs that you had, for the studio when you first began?
Yeah, I can. So basically, when my husband was like, you need to quit your job and I'm going to give you this amount of money to make it happen, it was $30,000. And that was, I had a friend who was a contractor. So I rented the tiniest space I could. I knew that it wasn't my permanent home, but a lot of people, and I've seen this over and over with studio owners, they go for it big time and start out with a huge out of pocket. And then what happens is their mindset from day one is, I got to make that back. Right. Yeah. So it creates a frantic sort of energy. And I've seen it way too much. And people are in trouble because they kind of blew their wad at the very beginning. And then, teachers are coming to me going, this studio is not paying me. How do I deal with this? And I'm like consulting all my employees on how do they get money from other studio owners, like how do they get paid? So I knew that I wanted to start as small as I could. And 35,000 was bare bones. Like, I did everything. Like, I I literally was doing all the bookkeeping. I was doing all the marketing, all the emails, answering the phones, teaching the classes, scrubbing the toilets. I mean, I'm talking everything. I didn't have I got a tiny little space that was 900 square feet. The bathroom was in the
Oh,
studio.
wow. Wow.
I didn't have a lobby. I just had like a shoe, shelf to separate. I did everything. It was my cell phone was the phone number. I did the website. I built it myself from scratch. I did everything. And that still cost me $30,000 to do all of that.
Wow. How many hours were you working a week? Like, give me an idea. How many hours were you working a week?
Oh gosh, 12 hours a day. Easy.
Wow.
12 hours a day, pretty much 7 days a week, to a point where my husband was like, I didn't give you that money so you'd have no life. Like, you got to do something. Because I was just, I would get calls and I was answering all the correspondence and I was doing all the marketing. I was going to Chamber of Commerce meetings. I was meeting people around town, telling them about offering free intro workshops. We had 29 classes. I was teaching 15 and I had a friend teaching 14.
Oh my gosh.
And doing all that other stuff.
Oh my God, I'm having anxiety just thinking about all that. Oh my gosh.
But I knew that and I only had this much resources. So I needed to, and it was worth it to me to just dive in, and that was when I was like, okay, no more getting my nails done. No more getting my hair cut. Everything's going to have to be upgraded. Not everything's so I just was willing to make those sacrifices because I wanted it that bad.
Well, let me ask you, how old were you when you first opened that first studio? That first space?
I was 33.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm asking that because a lot of people I talk to people every day that are in their late 40s, early 50s, maybe even the early 60s are thinking about opening up a studio. And I'm just trying to give people a decent idea of what it's all going to require.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back to this question later on because I want to it is an important point because there's so many different scenarios of renting space and also teaching out of your home and then also doing a retail space. You are.
Hi, sweetie. Let me just. My son just walked in, so I'm gonna move into the other room. But I'm just gonna say, can you say hi? Hi. He just walked in, so I'm gonna walk in the other room.
Okay.
So that way you can play in here, okay? Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. So that's actually a good point. And so I want to circle back around to that eventually, because the thing is that those are three big scenarios for people who want to have their own space to teach classes versus going to other studios and teaching there. So you had the 900 square foot space, and tell me, what were some things that you did to get the word out? You said you went by the Chamber of Commerce. What were some other things that you did to grow the studio? What marketing did you did? What were some of the most successful things that you did? And what were things that didn't work as well?
Yeah, I did a little bit of everything. I joined the Chamber of Commerce. They came and did the whole ribbon cutting ceremony and the whole thing.
That's cool.
Which was awesome. It was really cool. And it was pouring down rain, and which is supposed to be a good sign, I suppose. But so yeah, that was really cool. I had a little henna party. I mean, it was just like a party kind of thing. It was really cool. And then and I'll be real honest, and it might not be this way now because there was no Facebook, Twitter, there was no Instagram, there was no none of that existed. And so, there was a lot of times when I would just, empty class after empty class after empty class of just, okay, whew, and then I'd walk down to the coffee shop, talk to that person and exchange cards. And then, I put ads in a local paper, and then if you place an ad, they did an editorial. So they did an editorial, like a picture spread kind of thing. And I did ads in the yoga magazines, like the Yogi Times, the LA Yoga. And I got people from there too, because I had people bring in a little card that's like free, class if you bring this in. So I did newspapers, I did magazines, yoga magazines. I joined the Chamber of Commerce. I really didn't get a lot out of there. I got people to help me with things, but I didn't get a lot of business from that actually, which was surprising. But a lot of it was just, I had friends and walk-bys and people, just looking up yoga and finding us, and they would call the chamber and ask, and they would get, but I didn't get like a lot of chamber members, but people would call the chamber like, oh, where's the nearest yoga studio? And they would say, Yoga Blend. So I just kind of did a little bit of everything, and I would just go to, I really tried to be involved in the community, the restaurants there, the shops, like that. I offered free intro to yoga every month. And I still, to this day, we do it every other month. We offer a free hour-and-a-half intro to yoga workshop. And, like I did it last weekend, and I had 20 people.
That's cool. That's really cool. Because the thing is that, think about it. I mean, like, and I know you realize this too, is that what is the primary marketing that we see is that it's these people doing extreme yoga poses. And in that situation, like, people are completely intimidated. They're like, especially the beginner, they're like, listen, I can't do that. Like, why am I going to get a yoga? I'm not a pretzel. So for people to actually dispel the myth and actually like give people the introduction to beginning, like, what is it? What is yoga? Like, give them an actual introduction to it is really, really not only beneficial, but probably really good in terms of creating like some loyalty and starting to build that relationship with those individuals that come in. That's
totally.
Cool.
And I think it's important, to really tell people. And I'm like, look, of course, I'm a businesswoman. I want you you come back here, of course. And if it's not the right place, I also want to educate you so that when you go somewhere and you can be empowered to make decisions, if you're being forced to do something or you don't feel like it's right for you, like I really want to educate people too. Like, yes, I want you to come back, but also it's that important to me that you don't give up just because you have a bad experience. Class,
Right.
So I've been doing that, the whole time. So and then, there was a point when I was like 6 months in and I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And because it was like, okay, the money is, because that money, that 30,000, that was to be my bills. That was to be the build out. That was, it was like permits, licensing, hardwood floors, like all of that stuff that you have to invest, and my salary and the pay, stuff. So
wow,
it was dwindling, and my rent was very cheap for Los Angeles. It was very cheap for that 900 square feet, but it was still a lot to me. And at 6 months I was like, okay, well, this is the last 3,000 I got. Like, this is it. Like, I don't know. And then month 7, it was just like, oh, there it goes. And it started to build, and I started making enough to pay the bills and it just kept cruising. And then 2 years later, from the time I moved into that place, 2 years later, I had to move to a bigger location because we had to turn people away on a regular basis.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. And listen, I want to take this moment because the thing is that we alluded to in the beginning is that so many teachers are afraid to go after what they really want. Like a lot of us, it's probably one of the hardest questions to ask ourselves is, what do we really want? And I think a lot of us have some type of idea in the back of our minds. Most of us don't take the time to actually write down those goals. Oh, I thought you ran away for a second.
Well, I had to plug in. I realized my battery was about to go out. I was like, no, sorry.
And the thing is that, even when people actually do write down their goals, a lot of us say that, this is the life we want to create, but most of us are scared to go after it. And the thing is that you had the courage to go out there to create that retail space. And, you have such a great story because it makes sense. There was a progression where that led up to getting the retail space. You didn't just go, okay, I want to open a studio, let's do it. And not saying that it doesn't work, but I mean, you really warmed yourself up to that actually opportunity. So even though you were scared, you still were putting your foot in the water and just getting in little by little until it totally made sense to jump right in. So you built up the studio, you did everything in terms of, going to the Chamber of Commerce, connecting with people, giving your business cards, just sending everything out, putting an ad in the newspaper. You said, social media really wasn't there at that point in time. So did you do any type of yellowpages.com or anything? The Yellow Pages do anything else like that at that moment?
I think I did. I think I did Yellow Pages, and I for a time, and I didn't get anything from it because we would, have people tell how they found out.
Yeah.
Most everybody, which is awesome, and I'll tell you, this is to this day. A lot of people are walk by, drive by. Now, people and the internet, people still could find us, but there wasn't Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There wasn't, but they could look up yoga in Burbank, and we would, right?
Okay.
So that was on search engines. But, most of our business, it was walk by, but still to this day, 50% of our business is referral, which is awesome.
That is awesome. That means you're creating a community there where people just love to be there. And so they're sharing that with others, because I always say this for studio owners, people come for the benefits, they stay for community.
Absolutely. And that, to me, being from the South and having that small community of that studio where she just entrusted me to handle things and, and be a part of things. And I was like, I want to create that like safety place. People can come and sit and have tea and just wait to the next class or visit with somebody. And, visiting is a big thing in the South. And I wanted people to have a place to visit and just hang out. And so, yeah, and quite frankly, the people that are loyal to us and that are awesome students, I want their friends. I want their family there. Like, those are my,
Yeah.
So
birds of a feather, birds of a feather flock together? I mean, if you like those people, I mean, of course you would want more people like that to come in. Yeah. So you built an amazing, again, I want to repeat this. You were voted #2 yoga studio in LA by the Huffington Post. That's a huge deal. That's amazing. We just
found out. It just showed up. We were like, what? That's amazing.
You were voted one of the top 5 yoga studios to visit in LA by the United Way magazine. So when people are on, we're on United flights and they open up a magazine, they would see that. Can't get better free publicity than that. And then, recently you were voted one of the top 18 studios to visit by expertise.com, and they had evaluated something like 863 studios. That's just amazing. There are 863 studios in LA. I can't believe they actually took the time to go to all of those. I know. It's truly, you've created something really special there when you're getting this type of notoriety, So what do you feel like you've done now? Like you say that 50% of the people that come in are referrals. So how are you creating that community within Yoga Blend?
So, and I'm glad you asked this, because this is something that I feel is super important. A big part of it is presence at the studio. Being there, just even if you're just sitting there reading a book, or not that I really have time for that, but just always there. When I first opened it, I was there. And, even though at the time, now it's different now, but when I first opened, it wasn't a studio with a lobby and a desk staff and a phone, it was my cell phone, but I sat at the studio all day long and I would bring my computer, whatever, so people could come in and walk by and ask questions and be a presence there and just wait. If I didn't have a class, I'm like, okay, but I'm going to stay here and hold, if nobody showed up, I'm going to hold the energy for people to arrive. Even if they didn't show up today, I kind of want to ground so I would just sit and do my own practice or, whatever, just to sort of say, I'm serious about that. I'm going to stay here and stay present and not get caught up. And so that was big. But then also, and this is something that I am so grateful for and I do not take for granted. And I so appreciate. So a couple weeks after I opened, one of my friends came to work at the studio. That was 12 and a half years ago. She's still with me. She's the general manager.
Aww.
I have over 10 people who've been with me over a decade.
Wow. That's unheard of.
I know. And that's why I'm like, it almost makes me want to cry, because I trust these people. They don't want to leave. They're like, I'm in, and it's great. They're like, I can't even, I tried teaching other places and I don't even want to, so these people are people I trust. I've empowered to make decisions on my behalf, because now I live part-time in Nashville and back and forth because I had to be here with family. And when you have 10 people out of 40 something that have been there over a decade, and then there's another, say 10, 20 that have all been there over 5 years. And so it's there's a lot of sense of ownership and within the community of teachers and staff and students that have been coming for 12 and a half years, you know, and that they walk up and somebody comes in, they're like, oh, are you new? Let me show you around. Our staff doesn't even have to do their job half the time because students will do it. So it's really awesome. And I feel very blessed to have so many people that I don't even think about it. I know they'll make the best decision. And if they make a mistake, so what? We all make mistakes. We'll work it out. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, let me ask you then. So, how were you able to keep these people around for so long? Like, what do you think has been kind of the parts of that equation to keep them loyal and keep them in the studio?
Because for me, this is a great question. That I always said that the yoga is first, and if the business ever overpowers the yoga for me, then I'm out. Like if I start running it based on numbers and based on, all these things based on the customer's always right and this and that and kind of bending over backwards for people who are acting like jerks, like I'm not going to do that. So if that ever starts to happen, I'm out. So the yoga was always first. I believe in abundance, and I believe that there's more than enough to go around. And I believe that, I've never limited my teachers from teaching anywhere they want. They can teach across the street. And they're like, why? And so I've always empowered people and also ran it like a business. Even though the yoga comes first, I have not missed a payroll in 12 and a half years. Every 2 weeks, people get paid. I do contracts. I do things that make it professional and make people want to work with me because they know. And I've heard way too many studios, people are coming to me like, how do I get paid from these people? What do I do? I don't understand. Like, yoga is such a, I don't know if it's just like, oh, well, it's all peace and love and like, I'll get to it. Like it's, la, 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 la. No, be a business. So I think it's the balance between the yoga's got to come first. Like I believe in, abundance, and I believe in, that treating people well and, doing all the 8 limbs in as much as I possibly can in the business. But I also believe in being professional and being very tight, like a tight ship. I follow all the rules. I get all the permits. I have people that are W-2. I do all the things that I'm supposed to do so that I can just teach yoga,
Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, like, let me kind of interject, because I think this is a really big point. Was let's face it. I mean, I was talking to someone about this earlier today, another teacher, and it was like, listen, a lot of us came to yoga because we were suffering. And, especially for me, I mean, I had terrible anxiety. I mean, it was just debilitating, like I was fearful even to go into the coffee room just because I didn't want to talk to people. I just didn't know what to say. And so finally, like I come to yoga and somebody tells me, listen, Ryan, you're whole and complete as you are. There's nothing that you need to do. All the happiness, everything that you've ever wanted is inside of you. You don't need to get the car, the house to make the money. And what did I do? I mean, I finally had something in my life that I really felt like was me. It was genuine. It was conscious. It was authentic. And it gave me at least a pause from that suffering. And so what did I do? I pushed yoga so far up on such a big pedestal that anything that was not yoga or on that wavelength was bad or less than. I was creating this huge duality in my life. And I came from a marketing and sales background. So business, sales, marketing, these were bad. These were like corporate-y. These were bad things. Business, sales, marketing, your website, social media, any of that. None of that has energy. It's only the energy that we give it. Yep. And I used the example earlier today. I said, you can take a brick and you can build a house, or you can throw it through a window. It takes on the energy of that person. Money is not bad. Business is not bad. Sales is not bad. Actually, if business, sales, and marketing is done the right way, there's no manipulation. There's no Jedi mind tricks. There's no like selling someone. It's about developing a relationship with someone. And so I love to see your approach and the fact that you've done this in a way that it's like being real. Like, listen, it is a business. Yoga comes first, no matter what. but it is a business, and we have to perform in consistency and rhythm for not only our customers, for our teachers. Pay them on time, take care of them. And that's why you have people that are in your organization, I would say, that have been around since the beginning. And that's just simply beautiful. And that's why you're in business. And it's sad to say, I mean, first off, 9 out of 10 businesses, 94% of businesses in America go out of business in 5 years. I would say that's probably consistent with yoga studios. And, you see these teachers that are trying to operate on, listen, law of attraction is absolutely true. I'm not, arguing that. But oh, I'm operating on love and light. And
right. Yes.
You have to believe in yourself. You have to absolutely believe in yourself, and you have to have faith for sure. But you still do have to do the things that, keep you in business, which means hard work and taking care of your customers and your teachers. So,
and where everybody feels taken care of. And I think that's such a huge point. It's that, and I say this a lot, and thank you for that, and I appreciate it. It is a fine line, that duality and finding the balance between the two. And, and something that I think that is important too, is that I don't bow down to my customers. I am kind, loving, compassionate, but I don't believe that the customer's always right, because they're not. They're students, and they're coming, like you said, we come to yoga because there's some suffering. And so when someone comes in and they act in a certain way that, maybe is aggressive or, super negative towards my staff, like I tell my staff, like, look, you set a boundary. Like we're here to teach them something, but also at the same time, have compassion. They're suffering, right? So it's finding that, and empowering the staff to know that I've got their back, that I'm not going to let someone come in and abuse them, in that way. And, and because that was important to me, because I have been abused by a client because the client's always right, to me, it was so important to never say that to my staff, because if they come in yelling at you and then I say they're always right, no. No. It is not your fault that a teacher had a funeral and can't be here for this class and they're going to come in and yell at you. Like, no, this is not right. So I think that, and that's again the yoga, is finding that place where, and I use a lot of the chakra system. It's like, we got to be grounded. We got to pay our bills. We got to get, firmly established and bring things to life and stay really secure. But then we can do the other work, as well. So we need all of it. We need to be business, but we also need to be open and loving. And so, yeah.
Well, and a lot of us, I think a lot of studio owners are operating in fear because they're like, I don't want to lose customers. So they'll bend over backwards, even if it feels like they're doing something against their own integrity or like they're crossing a boundary, because they're afraid. But that's the thing. If you stand in your truth and you're willing to actually draw a boundary, people respect that, and they will stay around because they respect that. If you bend over backwards, now you're inviting people to take advantage of you.
Yes.
And that don't appreciate you. So it's not exactly a client you want to have. If you're able to draw a boundary and stay true to who you are, then you're going to keep people that you want to work with around. And the people that you don't want to work with, they'll go somewhere else.
Totally. Yep. And this is something I think is important. I have asked a handful. I am very grateful that in 12 years, 12 and a half, I've not had to do this much, but I have asked people to never come back again. I just don't think we have what you are looking for,
right? Because
we are not going to do that. We don't provide that. I see that this is important to you. I think you should go somewhere else. And in fact, I'm going to give you your money back so you can go find that. I'm not even going to, I just want you to go find your happiness. It ain't here. And, to really stand true into what that means. And, we have yoga studios now opening up, door right across the street, everywhere, all around. And people are like, does that make you nervous? Make you literally across the street. And I'm like, no, because I know that what we offer is unique. I know that we have something, not everybody's our student. I can't fit all of LA in my studio, nor do I want to, and that if I'm concerned about what someone else is doing, I need to start looking in and doing better. I need to do something better. Like I don't need to look at what other people are doing. I just need to focus on what am I offering, and is it the best I possibly can offer,
Well, Christy, we've talked about this. How many teachers do you have in the studio right now?
I think it's around 30 teachers, and I have like 10 or 12 desk staff. We have, people are come in. We just had a couple of people leave. They moved out of the state. So I haven't, but we're around maybe between 25 and 30 at any given time we have on the schedule.
And that's a lot. That's,
yeah.
Because the thing is that, we won't talk specific numbers by any means, but at the same time, that's a lot to look after. It's a lot of moving parts. And that's what adds to the stress of owning a studio, is actually all of those moving parts, people that you have to manage, and it's not just the students coming in, because good Lord, it's 30 people is, again, it kind of makes me, oh my God, how would I be able to look over 30 people? And then you have the students on top of that.
And the desk staff that are separate, because now we do have a separate lobby and we have 2 rooms, and so yeah, there's all the desk staff that do all that, which they don't, some of them teach, but for the most part they're just running the desk. So it's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of emails.
I can't even fathom. I can't even fathom the communication, how to keep that, cohesive, and how to keep that in alignment. Obviously, so that's a good question. How have you been able to keep that? Because you said that you were in LA, and then now you've moved back home to Nashville. How were you able to do that?
So when I had my son, he was born super premature, and he was in the hospital for 3 months. So that was sort of a testing ground of, I just didn't go to the studio for 3 months. I just had to empower people, because I was going to be by my son's incubator for 3 months. And so I just called upon people to help, and they just stepped up. Everybody was like, food was showing up at my doorstep. People were doing things that just, I didn't even know was happening, and I just was like, I need your help. I need, it was really an interesting surrender, because it wasn't the birth I wanted, the home birth in the water, all hippy dippy. So I had to let go of all that. But then I also had to let go of my control over, being so invested and involved in every decision.
Yeah.
Because really, at that point, nothing, I didn't care. What came first was my son. That was it.
Of course.
And so, yeah, so that was a test in sort of doing that. And then, a year and a half later, my brother passed, and my mom, I'd already lost my dad a couple years before that. So I had to move back to Nashville, and it was hard, because I wanted to be with my family and support my mother, but I didn't want to leave my baby. It was my dream come true. It was everything I dreamed of and more. But that couple of years prior, when my son was born in 2010, we started making the move in 2013. So I started turning a lot more over when I became a mother and got him home. And so it was a gradual process over a couple of years of letting go of things and just trusting people to make a good decision, and me doing the things I felt comfortable with. And then when I started moving, I still go back once a month, and I'm still there 10 days a month, pretty much. But I have people that, I get on the phone with once a week. I have a couple of managers, and then I have some really senior teachers that have been there for a really long time. And they just know what's up. They know how to handle all the situations, good or bad,
And I'll tell you, there's a couple of things that have come up, and it's funny, because I sent over a list of questions to you, Christy, and I was like, there might be some offshoot questions from that, and I think we've definitely stored away from those questions, but it's still the main questions are still there. But during one of our discussions, when we first originally met, you told me that there were some goals that you had, and one of those was to pay your teachers more. And I had shared with you that what I had seen studio owners do was to, make it so if you have 0 to 6 students show up, or 0 to 5, you get $12. If 7 to 10 students show up, then you get $20. If you have 12 to 15, or it was an incremental. And to me, I understand that in some ways, because the students are coming, yes, because of the studio, but often because of the teacher. And you want to have your teachers invested in, marketing their own classes, because that's how you grow your following.
Yep.
But from what you've shared with me previously is that you have kind of a set rate, not a set rate, but like, you have a difference, like if a teacher's been with you for 10 years, then obviously they're making more than the people that just came in. So you decided not to do anything like a sliding scale like that with the studio.
No, here's what I did. When I first opened, I had everybody have a base rate and then $3 per person over 8. So let's say it was $30 or whatever.
Okay.
And then $6 per person over 8. Well, what was happening, people were getting 2 people. Well, the classes were, at the time, $15 classes, $30. Well, they're getting $30 and nothing left,
Yeah.
So I had to stop that model. And I was like, look, okay, here's the classes that aren't performing to, whatever capacity, like the classes that were doing 10, 20 people, that's no brainer. But the classes that were getting 3 and 4 people, like there was no way for me to make money. I was like, I either have to drop these classes or I have to turn them to per head, $4 per head. And the people that decided like, I want to keep teaching it, their classes all of a sudden, just me switching it to $4 per head. So if you get 1 person, it's $4. If you get 10 people, it's 40. All of a sudden their classes popped up to 15 people. So they're getting $60 a class.
That's interesting how that happened.
Yeah, when they weren't invested in their own success, they were just getting a paycheck regardless. I don't know, energetically, something switched when all of a sudden, and these classes started doing well. And now I've got people, they can make $120 for an hour and 15-minute class.
That's awesome. So that you're still doing that. Okay.
Now, for some people, I give a base rate, but it works out to be the same, but they get it just because they've been there so long.
Right.
But it doesn't matter because their classes are 20 people anyway, so it doesn't matter. They would have, they're going to get that rate easy. I would like to take it up $1 per head, which is funny though, because if I do that, that's going to be like $3,500 a month. Just $1 a head.
Yeah.
And I want to do that. So that is one of my goals, but it's a lot, to do. The overhead for running a video, I'll tell people, listen, it's worth it. It has given me everything I wanted. I found like a platform to teach, a community, people that I love, an opportunity to hold trainings and workshops and do retreats. But the overhead is astronomical.
Yeah.
It is. And the more the studio makes, the more they take, and they is everybody. It's like, like, wow, we made a profit, and that profit goes right back out the door. It's this thing that, it's crazy. So yes, it's wonderful and worth it. And also it's heavy. That brick and mortar is like, there's a lot of overhead with the studio. But there's a sacrifice, and I was willing to make that. So
I will make a blanket statement just from doing this, working with teachers, yoga teachers, and a lot of studios over the last 3 years, is that I have not seen a studio owner make over $75,000 a year, even if they're like between $500,000 and $1 million gross.
Not even close. Not even close. And we're super successful. The money comes in, but the money goes right back out. Payroll alone, and the taxes and the workman's comp and the, liability insurance and the business insurance and the rent keeps going up. And there's just so many pieces and moving parts and things that have to get paid, and I do have people that are employees. And again, I'm a rule follower. I don't want to get my employees to be fined because they're supposed to be a W-2 when I'm claiming them as a contractor.
Yeah.
If they come in set hours and they have a shift and they're using my supplies, they're an employee. So yes, there are teachers that are just contractors, but there's some that do, so I follow the rules, but in that, because I don't want to get fined. I don't want my teachers to get fined. I want to just do the yoga. I want to get the business. So, that there's a cost associated with doing things.
Oh, heck yeah, there is. Shoot, yeah. I've talked to at least 3 studio owners who had to shut down because like California came back at them and like, oh, well, you owe for the last 3 years,
Taxes.
and it was like $7 or $10,000 and they didn't have it. And they were just like, we have to close shop. And I was like, man, that's so horrible.
So I was like, I will pay that extra money for peace of mind.
Yeah.
And I owe it to my students. I owe it to my teachers. I owe it to my staff to follow the rules because they trust that by me opening a business, I make a commitment to follow the rules of a business.
Right.
And I think that not willing to do that, you shouldn't open a studio. Like, you have to do it. You have to follow the rules.
So putting yoga first, integrity with the business, and also just keeping your boundaries, drawing, staying true to your boundaries is probably what has made you truly successful. And I mean, there's so much more to it than that. I don't mean to like try and sum up things, like, oh, this is how you've been successful. But at the same time, like, those are three main points that I think any person like that's going into business needs to be true to, is like, listen, put your passion first, then, keep your integrity with that passion. And then at the same time, draw clear boundaries, and don't go into that gray area. Like, just basically stay true to yourself with that. So we've covered a lot, Christy, thank you so much. I mean, like, the only remaining question kind of that I have, again, we've talked about how in the beginning you started out, like, you were creeping into this role of owning a retail space. You tried everything from, renting out space to having people in your home, and then to now having a retail location. What advice would you give someone who's right on the, like, I want to open up a studio. I feel like that's the way to really become like financially, successful. If you were to sum it up right now, like, what would you say to someone who wants to open up a studio?
Do your practice. Like, have a personal practice that you do at least every other day, because it can get really overwhelming, and if you're practicing, you have a lot more clarity, and you're a lot more grounded, and you don't have the noise getting in the way, because it's easy to get caught up. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers. It's easy to get frantic by, that lack mentality, or that fear-based competitive, instead of, no, you know what, there's plenty, there's more, and only by practicing can I maintain that mindset. And so, I think that doing your practice will inform so much of what decisions you make, both boundary-wise, business-wise, yogically, to your staff, to your students. And if you're not practicing, it shows. It shows, because things frazzle you, and you get off track, and you lose focus, and you get ungrounded, and you can't get things complete. And, do what you say you're going to do, follow through with those things, because then people will believe in you. And if people believe in you, then they trust you. And if they trust you, they're going to be loyal. And if they're loyal, they're going to tell their friends, and things like that. So that's a big piece of it. And then also, I think this is important too, that not every student is your student, and that's okay. Like, it's important to remember that the people that want what you have to offer are going to find you, and they're, I think that trying to make everybody your student, and you do this with the ideal client, and I think it's super important. Even with the studio, not every student is your ideal. Even though we go prenatal all the way up to 90 or 150 years old, doesn't matter.
150 years old, wow! I would love to see that class. That'd be awesome.
Make it up a number. I didn't want to limit anybody. Just in case we have that guy that's 149. I didn't want to turn him away. But right. I think that it's important to know what it is that you want to offer, and to stay true to that and be consistent. A guy came up to me like a couple of months ago, and he said, Christy, this yoga studio is the most consistent relationship I've ever had.
Wow.
I've been coming to the 9:30 class on Wednesdays for 12 and a half years. I've never had this much of a committed, consistent thing. And that was pretty powerful, because I was like, wow, to be that for someone, it's pretty cool. And then, I always think of the Kriya Yoga in Sutra 2.1 is the tapas, svadhyaya, and ishvara pranidhana, speaking about take the action, reflect with people you trust, get advice, find a coach or someone like you, that can give me advice on a new venture that I'm going out on. And, do that reflection, and then surrender the results. Trust in the quality of your actions, really allow things to unfold, knowing that you've done the best you can possibly do. and then, you know, continue that cycle of take the action, reflect to make sure it's a good one, and then surrender and just get out of your own way. And I think that comes from doing the practice for sure.
Well, that warms my heart to hear you say that, to start off with that, you know, because, in my webinars, I always talk about the shifts that you need to make in order to be successful as a teacher. And the first one is staying aligned with the path of yoga, because it's a path of liberation. Like, yeah. Why reinvent the wheel? Like, it's already been tried and true. Stay in line with the path and everything will open up and become sustainable. And you really, to me, that's where you develop the yamas and niyamas as a baseline of integrity. And it's that baseline of integrity that allows us to find success, and that's how the higher paths of yoga open up. Because if we're not in integrity, if we're doing things that are against the yamas and niyamas, then we have that part eating up our consciousness. And that's why the higher levels of yoga, I think, stay away from some of us, because we just simply aren't living a life of integrity. If you have someone that's wanting to open up a studio and they're like thinking, okay, well, I have an option of my house, renting a location, and then opening up a retail space, what would you say to that person? I know it's a pretty big question, but
it is. You know, I think that if you work better on your own and sort of that renting a space is great, because you don't have the overhead. Someone else is paying the overhead. Someone else is paying, you know, for those things. It's nice because it gives you an opportunity to rent the space, do your own thing. And then your home is great. But you may not want a bunch of strangers coming into your home, you know, like with the program I'm going to be doing with you, you know, I am going to have that piece, but it's going to be very exclusive. It's going to be interview based and things like that. So you know, it may be general public coming into your home if that's a little weird. And with the studio, like if you want to create like a bigger, larger community and have that space where people can gather, you know, I think it's a great idea, and know that with it comes a lot of financial weight. That there is that responsibility that you are providing for people. There's people that I am responsible for their livelihood, you know? So if you're not willing to take on that responsibility, because ultimately what happens, and again, I would not do anything, I would do it all over again. I always say I won't go forward and do it again. I would always go back and do it again to get me here, but I don't need to keep create a new one.
Right.
I've learned a lot. I did that, you know? But I think that it's important to remember that when you have a studio, if you're going to do it of the best that you can possibly do and be the owner of it, that you will come last in the equation, right? Like as far as, because you got other people to take care of that rely on that.
That is a huge point. That is a huge point. Like, especially, like, let's face it, a lot of us sometimes have ego. We want to be in front of the room. We want to be, like, you know, number one. Like, so, I mean, like, if you want that for your life, I mean, if that's somewhat important, then studio or retail space is probably not the right, you know, scenario for you.
Because unless you hire someone to be the full-time manager, like 40 hours a week, and you don't have to touch it and you just want to teach, that's a whole different thing. But I knew that for me, I wanted to run it the way I wanted to run it and infuse my personality. But that meant that that there were some sacrifices that I had to make for me, because I'm always promoting other people and, you know, other business and taking care of them financially. And that I, you know, payment when it comes to payroll, I get paid last if there's some left over. You know what I mean? Like, those are things which is okay. I was willing to do that, but I think it's important to know that it's not this big money making, like right off the bat kind of thing, if you're going to, right, have teachers and have a big schedule and things like that. Now, you could do it really small and just have you, another couple teachers, and only a few classes a day. And, you know, I chose to do it differently. We have, you know, 75 classes a week. We have 10 workshops a month, a couple teacher trainings a year, a couple retreats a year. Like, we do a lot. There's a lot going on. Yeah.
That's like at least 10 classes a day. Oh my gosh, girl, I don't know how you do it. Listen, I think we should end there, because, like, oh my gosh, 75 classes. This is cray to me. Listen, on behalf of whoever is listening, you know, whoever listens to this in the future, thank you so much. Because the thing is that like most people are not willing to open up the curtain to their yoga studio, to spill their guts, to, you know, just give you the playbook of what has worked, what hasn't. I'm incredibly grateful for your time, you know, Christy, for you doing this. And again, just thank you so much for doing this. I just really, really appreciate that. So again, Christy, you built something truly, truly special because, again, you have these relationships that, I mean, good Lord, I mean, how many people have, most of us can't count on more than one hand how many people have been in our lives more than 12 years that we love and we like to be around. I mean, it's rare to find that tribe, and you've been able to build that in a very authentic and conscious way. So thank you again for sharing this time with us to just open up the playbook and just really dive deep. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and hopefully it was helpful, and I really encourage people, go after what you want, you know, stay true to it, and also know that it's going to be a lot of work, and that's okay. You know, that's part of the game, right?
A little bit of hustle. There's going to be some hustle.
Totally. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Ryan.
Well, thank you, Christy. I'm going to go ahead and sign off, but a really unbelievable call. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Bye.
All right. You take care, Christy.